Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another live stream. If you are in our Discord chat, that I said I'm trying out different setup. If you aren't in there, then I'm trying out a different setup. Instead of using a third-party software, OBS Studio, I'm trying the website itself. Restream has their own built-in studio on the browser, so I'm trying it that way, and it only let me do like a 1-minute little countdown there, and then it creates the live stream. Once you actually go live, you can't set up beforehand and show up, it looks like. So I'm going to go over to YouTube and Twitch real quick and check that they are actually working. If you are watching, you can throw something in the chat as well and see if that's working as well. And I can always throw stuff from the chat over so we can see everything is working. But it looks like Twitch is working and it looks like YouTube is working. So better than last time where I had some issues I had to deal with getting them to populate from Restream over to YouTube and Twitch at the same time. So it seems like this time we are doing just fine. So for those of you that are new here and don't know what we do, there's Mikey. So thanks for commenting, Mike. So now I can show you the comment on the screen. This is like a different little bit of setup there, but I can still pull up the comments, everything like that. So for when you guys have questions, for you all that are new here, we're doing a form check live stream. And in order to get into the form check live streams with your videos, you have to join our Discord channel. So if I pull up my screen right here real quick, you can always go to my Instagram or King of Lift's Instagram, and then you'll see the link in the bio. It's not going to let me do it right now without logging in, looks like. The other way you can do it is just go down into description, and you should be able to see it down in the description as far as the direct link to, let me see if I can pull it from there, the direct link to Discord. Well, actually, what I can do is pull it straight from Discord. Let me just create a link real quick that does not expire. Generate new link. And I'll throw that in the chat. So you have a few different ways that you can get in there. You can use what I just dropped in the chat. You can use what's down in the description below. Or if you don't join it now and you go over on Instagram, you can use the link in my bio or the link in the King Lifts bio and get over to our Discord. And that'll send you over to here, our Discord channel, where we have different channels here, a general chat, questions about our position of power programming app, and then we have our form check section over here. So in our form check here, this is the last one I did from last week going up to here. So now we're going to start off right here with this one, Alex QB. And I downloaded the Discord app instead of doing it on the browser. So a little bit difference there as well, but we'll see how we can make this all work with this different setup and see if it's a little bit easier on my crappy laptop here that's several years old. So looks like for this one, I have to go pull up a web browser anyways for Google Photos. But let's get started right here and let's watch this video. So one thing here, I responded to him already in the Discord in text form, but some of the things I can do additionally there in video form is go over a little bit more in detail what exactly I'm seeing. So one of the things I'm seeing here, it appears like his feet are a little bit behind him when he unracks. So we want to try and get our feet directly underneath us when we unrack. So I know it's a different perspective, a different angle here as far as drawing this line, but we want to try and get the midfoot, the middle of our heel, or middle of our foot, directly underneath the bar so that we're standing straight up. So here it looks like he's a little bit behind the bar. So what can happen is if you're maybe too forward, is that maybe you unrack and you kind of stumble back. Sometimes if you're too far behind, either you go into the rack or you try and compensate and do like a good morning and lean back, because you're not just trying to come up out of the rack, you're trying to come up and out. So what some people are trying to do is like combine steps here and try and come up out of the rack in one motion, where instead you should be focusing on first unracking the weight, standing straight up, and then starting your 3-step walkout with the first step clearing the rack. So I try and think of it a little bit more as like a leg press. Okay, so you kind of have your feet, you know, in a moderate stance on the leg press, and you're just pushing, the leg press straight up the ramp. Okay, you're not trying to push it in a specific direction or anything like that. So here you're just trying to push down and send that bar straight up. So here you can see he kind of already leaned back a little bit as he goes to now his weight's over the midfoot where it before was a little bit forward. And then he's doing his steps here. So as far as doing it like, into 3 steps there is pretty solid. Okay. But then you can see once he got his feet set up here, then you can see he's moving around, moving his knees, like, bouncing around, soft knees, moving around still. So a lot of moving going on here, still moving. And then all of a sudden he descends. So what I'd rather see here is try and get that position down and then minimize this little extra movement of the feet, extra movement of the knees, unlocking, 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 unlocking. It could throw off a referee and think that maybe you're trying to like start the squat, because if you look at the top two here, you can see how he brings in his breath and he gets tight and pulls the bar down. So a spotter or referee may think, oh, he's starting to lift. And then they're like, okay, well, he's not starting to lift. He's still moving around his knees and everything like that. So for someone who competes, this could be maybe a little bit of a questionable issue of what's going on here. The referees may have their hands up and then tell you to rack the bar if they feel like your knees are not locked out. So just something to be careful of, that before even you do the squat, it's important to focus on the things as far as setting up and walking out, putting yourself in a good position. So you want to focus on that unrack where you're unracking straight up. Then you're doing your 3-step walkout where the first step is straight back to clear the rack. Then you step one foot, then you step the other foot. Then from there, hopefully you only just need to do micro adjustments with the toe angle or no adjustments. And then you get tight and you go down. When you go down, before you obviously go down, you want to make sure the knees are fully locked out so you actually get a squat command. And then you're only allowed to break the knees once and descend. Once you break your knees, that's considered your attempt. So if you're bending the knees and the bar's going up and down and everything like that, then they may say you can't do that. So just a couple things there as far as the unrack and the setup to go over before the actual squat. So now when we go into the actual squat, once he kind of gets everything ready. So the actual squat itself is good here. As he's descending, you can see he's breaking at the hips and the knees at the same time. The bar's in a good low bar position. Elbows are in a good position, kind of in line with the torso. Right there, depth looks pretty solid. He's allowing the knees to go forward. Feet are still flat on the ground. Good torso angle, good elbow angle. And then when he comes out of the hole, hips come back a little bit on this one, but not too bad there. Still a decent torso angle there. But as he goes into the next rep here, it starts to get a little bit worse right there. So you can see how fast those knees shot back right there. So he went from this position here, basically vertical here. And it's harder to tell, but the knees look like they collapsed in a little bit as well. So that's the other thing I mentioned to him, is that you want your knees to track back smoothly or as smooth as possible during the range of motion. So as you're going up, you want the knees to track back in a consistent speed. That way, your knees are extending throughout the entire range of motion. And as the knees are extending, the bar is going up. Where in this case, the knees extended, but some of that knee extension was just to move the hips horizontally. The bar did not actually move up, or moved up very little here. So right there, you can see how little the bar moved up from there to there, but how much the hips travel horizontally away from the bar. So he's using up a lot of his knee extension to not actually move the bar up. He's using his knee extension just to move the hips back. And then now at this point, he has to use a lot of hip extension because now he's tipped over. And so he's going to be trying to use more of the hamstrings, the glutes, the lower back, and less of the quads. So this could come from a different number of things. As far as like muscular issues, oftentimes it could be if like the person doesn't have strong enough quads to maintain that knee forward and extend the knees against the load. The body tries to naturally shift into a position where the knees are in a more efficient position and then the hips are in a less efficient position to try and then use the muscles around the hips. So one way you can look at it as like a basic 2D diagram even though, again, we don't have the direct side view here, is if you draw a line straight from the midfoot up through to the bar, okay, the distance that this knee is away from that line, okay, the further this is away, the more difficult it's going to be on the knee joint. So what he's trying to do is shorten this distance to make it easier on the knee joint. And on the flip side, if I draw, like, let's just draw the end of the hip instead of the actual hip socket. This distance here, the further away it is, the harder it is on the hip joint. So he's trying to, create a imbalance here between how much load is going on each joint by trying to decrease the load on the knee joint and increase the load on the hip joint. So in that sense, sometimes it can just be muscular. Other times it can be like a bracing issue, a tightness issue. So if you're not tight, you're not bracing, and you're not rigid in your body, when you go and bounce out of the bottom, that weight can then throw you off. So potentially it could be something where, the person's loose and they're just losing their balance and getting thrown out of position. Over time of getting thrown out of position, rep after rep after rep, their body gets used to being in that position potentially, and their body can get stronger in that position potentially. So it can lead from a lack of tightness issue, like when you're a beginner lifter and not squatting properly, you build a bad motor pattern, and then you get strong in that bad motor pattern, and then you can lead to that weakness where maybe the quads are underdeveloped. And then the other thing going along with that too is just figuring out your balance and your pressure. Like, you want to be focusing on pushing down with your entire foot. So a lot of people say, push your big toe down, push your little toe down, push your heel down, and try and get a full base of support, not just trying to push only through the heel. You want to be trying to get as much contact with the floor as possible and push through all points as possible. And then the other thing is trying to find your balance of kind of staying in this area and not having your weight too far forward and not having your weight too far back. It's kind of hard to show or explain, really. The way I sometimes show it to people is like, if people on the bench, they bring the bar way over their head, they can kind of feel that it's difficult to hold the bar locked out way over their head, and they have to use their lats to kind of keep in position. And if they have the bar way over by their feet, then they're going to lose it towards their feet, and so they have to use their front delts to kind of hold in position. And it could be the same thing. Like, if I kind of try and stand here and you're standing up, even though you're standing up, you could have your weight shifted forward and you can have your weight shifted back, even though my feet are not moving. So when I go really far forward, then I'm more on my toes, okay? And I have to keep my balance. And when I'm really far back, I'm on my heels, and again, I have to keep my balance or else I fall over. So you have to try and find that balance in between. So that could be potentially a thing too, is if this lifter's potentially not balanced over the midfoot, and he's either too far on the toes or too far on the heels. In this case, maybe he's far on the heels when he comes out of the hole, and so then his body wants to shift back, and he's feeling that weight in the heels, and he needs to focus a little bit more on keeping that balance, pushing those toes down, and keeping a little bit more weight on the toes if he is overcompensating onto the heels. So that's something you do. It's a little bit harder to figure out on a squat, in the bottom position. You can maybe potentially try and feel it out in the top position. Same thing with the bench press. When you're locked out, try and feel it out, and then see if you can apply that where you're maintaining that pressure of all your big toe, little toe, heels, and everything centered coming down, and maintaining that coming up. The other thing too is even between the reps, you can see here, there's a little bit of movement as far as the knees. Are they locked out? Does he lock them out and then unlock them again? Some shaking, letting go of his hands and everything like that. So it's just cleaning up those little things. And then the other thing is just, as far as this says, you don't necessarily have to be very aggressive with your lockout until the bar comes off your back, because then the bar could be out of position. The bar can roll, it can drop, everything like that. So kind of either on an easier set, or if you're the type of person who has a very noticeable weak point, coming out of the hole, you're very, very slow. And then at lockout, you're very, very fast. So your limit as far as your max is that very, very slow part, but you have much more strength at the top end. And so you're accelerating so fast going into the top end that you're losing the bar off your back. So in those two cases, you may want to, once you know you have the lift, slow down a little bit going into lockout and not be so excessive. I know this could look good for, like, other people in the gym or for Instagram to see, oh my God, the bar's flying off his back. He's so strong. He's doing it so fast. But that bar coming off the back, okay, could potentially move the bar out of position. You can lose your tightness as far as the upper back and squeezing those shoulder blades. You could potentially dump the bar. It could hurt on your wrists and everything and on your back when it lands like that. It can cause some kind of injury. So I would not recommend this. Okay? And also because he's trying to absorb the weight, you can then see like his knees are soft to try and absorb that weight. So for someone like that, just relax going into lockout. Once you're three-quarters of the way up or whatever, and you know you have the lift, you can slow down a little bit, making sure you're staying tight while you're locked out, and then minimizing the movement and the readjustment between reps here to do the next rep. And I put that one at RP 8.5 because of that weak point. So it depends on how much you can grind it out through that weak point. And I believe Alex agreed down here. Yeah, so he said he rated at an 8.5 as well. So we agree there on the RP. So that's pretty much all as far as that squat. A few little things here and there that he has to work on. So we'll go to the next one. Thanks for showing up. John over here is skipping out on work. You don't even need to do it during your break, man. Just like, close the cubicle or, go hide in the bathroom and, just watch me instead. And you get paid to watch me talk about lifts. So let's go over to this next one from Wheelio. This one was a really solid one as well. So far, these last few weeks, like people that have been sending in videos, overall have been like really solid. Like, you can say a B, B plus, maybe an A minus as far as like grading these lifts, just minor things to work on. It's not like people are here doing like, terrible form and, cutting their squats and all that stuff like that. Overall, really solid. So again, when you watch this one, you just initially watch it, like, it looks really solid, like very few things to potentially work on. So one thing I forgot to mention to him in the Discord, but I'll mention to him, is if for people who do compete, okay, just a small thing, and it really doesn't make a difference, but just people who do compete, you have to take the thumb loop off of the wrist wrap when you go on the platform and do your attempts. So it's not really about you having to practice with having the thumb loops off, but you might as well take the thumb loops off because you don't want it to be a habit where you don't take it off. And then what happens is you go to the competition, you're walking out there to go do your squat, and you're going to set up, you're getting in the zone. And then the referee stops you and says, hey, get off the platform, take the thumb loop off, and then come back on. So it kind of just throws you off mentally that you have to to take the thumb loop off and go back and redo your setup, everything like that. Especially if it happens on bench press, like you might have set up, you got your arch, everything like that. You're ready to get the lift off, and then they say, hey, take the thumb loop off. So in that case, I would just say, for those of you who are out there watching, if you're going to compete, just take the thumb loop off and make sure you're practicing that way. Here you can see for him, much better here as far as the unrack. You can see how he went straight up. So he's still inside the rack here. He's just above it rather than already clearing it. So I just noticed I don't have my, I didn't put my screen back up. So now you can see it, thumb loop. So let's go back real quick and show the unrack again. So here, as far as the unrack, that's what I'm talking about right there. He just goes straight up. And then once he's straight up, then he takes the first step back to clear the rack. So he's not trying to turn it into one thing with two different movements there. Then he clears the rack. Then he sets up his right foot. And then his left foot's pretty much already where he wants it. So he's ready to go here. Then he can take his breath and do his squat. So the only thing really I noticed here as well, I think it happens on the first rep too, is there's a little bit of shifting here in the hips as he's coming up. So the hips kind of like shift towards our left, his right. And I think this knee comes in a little bit as well. So as we play this, you can see there a little bit of a shift there. We'll play it again. And now that I'm kind of watching it some more, it looks like maybe his butt's actually shooting that direction, and his knee, this knee, our left, his right, is the one caving in. So you can see right there how that kind of caves in, and that causes him to tip over a little bit. So it's not the best angle for it, but you can see there's some little movement going on here. And then let's take a look at the second one as well. So you can see there too, like he kind of like did the same thing. So here he's going down fine. And then there you can see as he's trying to go, there's a little bit of a knee caving in and a little bit of shifting of his hip. So it's hard to tell from this angle, but it looks like maybe this knee comes in a little bit this direction, and then the hips kind of shift that direction. And so he's getting like this little twisting action going on here. But other than that, everything looks solid as far as like, getting tight, the descent, maintain his torso position well. And he took time here as well between the reps. So after he finished his first rep, taking time at the top, resetting, taking a new breath, getting tight, then going down to the next rep. And that second rep was the one that tipped him over a little bit. You can see as he's going down right there, he kind of tipped over and his head got dropped because he kind of like, again, as he started to try and come up, he had that little bit of a shift, and a little bit of shift maybe threw him forward a little bit. So very minor thing. It's just looking into potentially maybe filming directly from the front. So if he films, instead of doing this angle view here, if he does it directly down this, kind of drew it back, but if he does it directly facing him, front view, then, and if he has it centered, then you can see as he goes down, you can draw a line. So what you can do is you would draw a line straight down the middle of his face, down his hips, down to the ground, so that you hopefully have half his body exactly on one side, half his body on the other side in the very bottom position. And then as he's coming up a little bit and you see that shift, then you can pause it again, draw that line again, and see if the hip shift is going towards our right, his left, and seeing whether that knee is also collapsing in and seeing if there's an issue there. If there's an issue there, I mean, it depends on how much the hip shift happens and whether it's an easy fix of maybe checking to see if there's some kind of tightness on one hip versus the other. Some people, if they drive a lot and they're using one foot for the pedal, the other foot's not doing anything, sometimes they can get some imbalances. Or if someone's like sitting here at a desk all day, but they're shifted over and they're looking at their monitor on their left side for hours and hours and hours and they're twisted, then that could potentially cause some stuff. So it's not always from the lifting, because you might be in the gym lifting for an hour or 2 hours, 4 to 5 times a week, and you're warming up or like that. But if you're sitting at work for, 6, 8, 10 hours and you're twisted, or if you're a driver and you're working a lot, 5, 6 hours of delivering stuff and you're just sitting in your car, then that can over time cause tightnesses on one side versus the other and cause like more of a dominant leg than the other. And so then potentially then you can have like it start developing into your squat and having these little small shifts. So potentially he can check and see whether there's like tightness on one hip flexor or on one glute medius or something like that, and maybe work on a little bit more warming up the hips before he starts. If he is plenty loose and plenty mobile and everything like that, there are other things people do. Like if you have a buddy, I've seen videos where people will use like a rubber band around the person to pull them in the opposite direction, so that they notice, okay, or in the direction that the hips are shifting. So you pull them purposely on the direction the hips are shifting, so they have to use the other muscles to fight against it. So in that case, then they're actively aware of like, oh, I'm getting pulled in this direction. Let me use the opposite muscles to actively get myself back to center. And then once you take that away and they squat, it could potentially help there as well, of learning how to use those muscles to keep them self-centered. It could just be a minor thing though, and it may not be an easy fix, and maybe it's not worth his time. So it just depends on him, like, what he has access to, who can help him out. If you can go see some kind of doctor, PT, chiro, whatever, I can maybe check and see if there's any mobility issues and what kind of recommendations they give. We're going to go into our next one after a quick water break. Mike over here, nobody would ever cut their squats. I mean, at least yours is close. I mean, like, no one's coming here with, like, quarter squats or like butt coming off the bench, like aggressively, or people having, like, issues with their, like, a really weird grip or anything like that. Overall, you all are doing very well. It could just be like the population. The people who are willing to submit their videos for a form check and get help are the people who are more adamant about their technique. And so they're going to have better technique overall. The people who have crappy technique, maybe either one, don't know that there's resources out there, but two, maybe they don't want someone to tell them, hey, you're doing this wrong, and you have to drop the weight and go and fix the stuff, because they don't want they don't want to hear that. They don't want someone to tell them that. They'd rather just stick to what they're doing. So let's go into Ayuma. Here has 3 different squat sets from 3 different angles here. And, one thing is the RP is low. RP 6, I agree, as well, is pretty low. So it can be a little bit more difficult to see form breaking down. But he also says that his friend told me he has a habit of placing the bar asymmetrically on the back. So I assume that means the bar is like shifted over to one side and not necessarily that's like tilted on one side. And he says he tried to eliminate it. So obviously it's going to be a little bit difficult for us to see that if it's already eliminated here. And then he's saying he biases his left leg slightly more and has a little bit of knee cave. So I saw some of that stuff as well. But overall, again, really good. Like this position right here, really good. If you like a thumbless grip and a wider grip, that's fine. Everyone's got to figure out their grip width that's best for them. Here, again, good job of standing straight up first and then taking a steps back. 3 steps right there. Look how efficient he is here. 3 steps, boom, no little adjustments of the knees or toes or hands or anything like that. From there, he takes his breath and ready to go. Here in the bottom position, again, it looks really good. Maybe he shifted to our left a little bit here at this point, but it's very minor. We don't have a direct front view here, but still, if we try to draw a line here, it's a little bit off, but the part of that could just be the perspective. But overall, really solid. Like there's no major issues here, I think. Sorry about that he needs to fix as far as being very asymmetrical. Same thing with the bar. It's hard to tell exactly if this is where the knurling is and if this is where the knurling is. But most people are like, if a lot of people filmed their squats from behind and actually saw the bar, I think a lot of people would be surprised of how they're all shifted over a little bit, or some people are shifted over a lot, to where some people you can even tell where like the knurling would be like in the middle of their shoulder on this side and the knurling would be out here on this side. So a lot of people are asymmetrical, and if someone actually came behind them and centered the bar for them, they would feel really different. Like, oh man, it feels way tighter on this side and it feels way off. So again, that could potentially come down to issues of mobility in the shoulders. And potentially, if you have one shoulder that's like tighter, it could be trying to compensate, and slowly over time, you're moving over to where the way you're setting up is symmetrical pressure and symmetrical tightness on both sides. So if one side is tighter, then it's going to move outwards to try and get that symmetrical tightness and pressure, but not necessarily symmetrical bar on your back. So potentially that could be something where someone's tight on one side, and so they naturally just move it like, half an inch over. And then maybe that gets tighter and tighter, and maybe they move it like 1 inch over, and enough months, then that can just become their normal position. And so again, that might be something that people have to test and see what kind of mobility they have in each shoulder and see if it's different. See if you have more external rotation in one, see if you have more internal rotation in one. Most people, because we use our hands for everything, you could potentially be using your dominant hand, let's say your right hand, for more things, whether it's like, using your phone, or whether it's like you're driving, or whether it's whatever, if you're cooking food and everything like that. And so potentially just using that dominant side more could make it a little bit different than the non-dominant side. And then if you do anything specific, like if you're someone who has to write a lot or draw a lot, stuff like that, you're excessively using one side, that could potentially happen, because that's happening over hours and hours every single day for years, and it can just develop over time. So let's keep going here. So he does have a little bit of knee cave as well. Again, it's nothing too major. So let's go back a little bit here. So here you can see on the way down, they stay in line with the toes. And then as he tries to come up right there, they collapse in a little bit. He basically keeps them out keeps them in the entire time. They don't go back out. I'm not a big on like trying to really fix knee caving. It depends obviously on how much it happens, how early it is in someone's career, but I, I I don't know if it's a major thing here that he needs to like, really focus on figuring out how to drive his knees out and only doing reps where the knees stay out perfectly, and figuring out what muscles he has to improve and all that stuff like that, or working on ankle mobility and stuff like that. I think maybe it's a little bit too much for how little it's happening. Now, if it gets more and more caving in as he gets heavier and heavier weight closer to his max, maybe that's a little bit different. But from what I've noticed with my experience with myself and my lifters and seeing other lifters that had issues, the maybe there is a solution, but what I've seen in the real world is people who do have a really easy job, or do like have not have an issue with driving their knees out and keeping them out on max attempts, never have an issue with knees caving in. Like for me, for example, I never had an issue with knees caving in, and so as I got stronger and stronger, raw and equipped, I never had an issue with knees caving in. I never had to work on anything to make sure that keeping my knees out. And on the flip side, people who do have their knees cave in all the time on heavier weights and max attempts, I've never seen them be able to change over time to where they can always have their knees out and it's never an issue. I've never seen someone completely solve the issue. People always had their knees come in. If there was someone who always had their knees come in, maybe they can improve it a little bit as far as like being mindful to, after it comes in, try and push them back out, or maybe be more mindful on lighter weights. But oftentimes people will just naturally go back to that position on heavier weights. Sometimes it can just be how their hip socket is made, and in that bottom position, they can't just develop the kind of force that they need to in that kind of position. And so they just have the knees cave in. Other times they just like using more of those muscles, those adductors like weightlifters use to help them pop out of the bottom. So I don't know if it's worth spending a whole bunch of time working on technique and mobility, and lighter weights and everything like that, if it's something that they're never going to be able to fix. Now, just being mindful of it and thinking about, okay, am I pushing my feet down into the ground? Are my heels coming up? Am I focusing on driving my knees out? Am I bracing properly? Everything like that. Obviously, being mindful of those things and focusing on those cues can be beneficial. I just don't like to go extreme with it. And like I said, I agree with the RP here, very easy. And then looking at the other views here real quick. So on this one, again, you can see the knees come in a little bit, but very minor. On this one, what you saw was the hips start shifting back a little bit, especially on that one rep. So you can see on this one, the knees are forward well. And then there, he may have bottomed out a little bit because it started shifting back a little bit on him. And then there, as his knees come in a little bit too, the hips kind of shift back. So it goes to a similar thing as the other lifter, Alex, where the hips shift back and the torso tips over a little bit. In this case, the torso doesn't tip over too much, just a little bit there. So on some reps, what's happening is maybe he's coming down very upright and the knees very far forward, and then his body just defaulting a little bit of shifting back and tipping over to get into a position it feels stronger to then come up with. So again, that could be potentially just being mindful of that, keeping the knees forward if it's only happening from time to time, making sure you have your balance right. And other things, just if you continue to build up the quad strength, then you can maintain that knee forward position and be able to extend the knees to bring the bar up rather than shifting a little bit back here towards the hips. So it happened a little bit on that rep as well. A little bit on that one. Not as bad. So it's a little bit hit and miss. And then if we look at this side view one real quick. So on that one, yeah, a little bit of hip shifting back, but see, like that one was better. So let's take a look at the 2 reps. So here goes down in a good spot here. Knees are forward well. And then there, a little bit of shifting back, but again, very, very minor there. And then going up well. Then on the second rep here, you can see how he keeps his knees forward much better. So if we watch that again here, he hits his bottom position right there, and then the knees stay forward the entire time. So part of that to me seems like it's not a muscular weakness. It's more of just figuring out his position, figuring out how to move his body and keep the joints where he wants them, making sure he has the good pressure on his feet, pushing down to the ground. He lets the knees go forward and then focusing on maintaining those knees forward. I think about trying to keep my knees forward, like, and if I'm trying to do like a high bar squat, front squat, or whatever like that, and I want to purposely try and keep them forward as much as possible, I think about like, trying to push the knees forward and trying to flex those quads and keep them forward that way rather than trying to let them shoot back. So he does a much better job on that second rep to maintain that position. And it's probably the fact that he shot back a little bit on the first one where he got a better feel like, okay, let me keep my knees forward and keep my chest up a little bit more. And that's why he was able to do a better job on that one. And then the rest of these look pretty good as well. So it was really, and that was a harder set. So it was really the first rep where it shot back and then he kind of like readjusted. So it just really, being mindful of your technique and your positioning and knowing like, okay, if you're someone who doesn't know how to squat, maybe you don't know how your joints are supposed to be positioned and how they're supposed to track. But if you know that, hey, I'm supposed to keep my knees forward and let them track smoothly throughout the entire range of motion rather than shooting back, then you may think about that kind of cue of like, hey, let me keep my knees forward, push my toes down to the ground as I'm coming out of the hole. All right, let's go. Alex has another video here. This one's going to be his deadlift. Just trying to see if it plays inside this, but it looks like we're going to have to open up the webs. Oh, it doesn't want to even do that either. Hopefully you guys can't hear it, but my computer fan has been running this entire time because it can barely handle this. But it's making do for now. So again, this is another thing as far as the technique is really solid. Like you don't see any issues here as far as like the back rounding. You don't see any issues as far as like supporting the bar on the thighs. He has the front view as well as the second video. There's no issues as far as like the knees collapsing in or anything like that. So again, really good technique here. We're just focusing on the finer points. And one of the finer points that I'm a little bit biased towards, obviously I'm a little bit biased because I think it's beneficial, is that I like more of a static start rather than this dynamic start, especially for people who are beginners or intermediates and they're trying to get started, it's it's like trying to get into proper position, like taking your time, get into the proper position, get as tight as you can, and then from that dead stop, everything is tight, initiate your pull and stand up. With this dynamic start, you have to time everything right and execute everything perfectly. You have to drop your hips at the right time, you have to stop at the right time, and you have to initiate your pull at the right time, or else things can go bad. You can start with your hips too high, you can start with your hips too low. And in this case, it's very minor, but when he drops down, his shins hit the bar and he pushes the bar forward a little bit. So in this case, his shins are throwing his bar path off by hitting them horizontally. So here, as he drops down, right there, he's hitting the bar. And then you can see how the shins are like moving a little bit as well. If you watch it again in real time and just watch the shins right here, just only focus on that, you can see his legs actually shaking right there. So it's kind of like if you drop a ball and it bounces a little bit less and less each time. So there, his shins are kind of like hitting the bar and it's hitting it less and less each time because he's so aggressively hit it the first time. And so just that little bit of movement can throw your bar path off or can throw your shin angle off. And obviously the hips are connected with that. So then the hips are shaking a little bit too. So if we watch this first rep again and just watch his hips, you can see how that little bit of movement. So that could potentially, throw off his starting position or just slow down his starting position as his body's trying to get settled in and get into a locked position to start initiating and get the muscles engaged. So if it was me, I would focus on maybe slowing down that dynamic movement or first doing a static pull, figuring out, okay, this is where my hips need to be. This is where my shin angle is. This is where my torso angle is going to be. This is how to pull the slack out of the bar. This is how to get tight. And then slowly focus on, okay, I'm going to do a dynamic pull, but I'm going to come down slow and then pull, come down slow and then pull. And over time, maybe speed it up, or maybe you find out that doing maybe a slower drop down and then pulling is good. You get to find out what position you want to be in. You can get tight that way. You don't hit the bar forward and it feels good and you don't have to go to a faster speed. So that's the only thing there. And if we go to the second video here from the front view, from the front view, you can see as far as wide stance looks good with the toes pointed out, the knees stay out well. He has his arms like locked out, nice long arms, smooth lockout. So again, no major issues there. It's just that pull. So if you come back and look as well at this leg right here, as he goes to do this first rep, you can see that shaking right there. So here, as he goes to pull, you can see how the knee caves in a little bit there. So it's just that shaking like kind of right there. And so it looks like he does have that knee kind of come in a little bit, and that's what's hitting the bar, and then he has to drive it back out. So if you're watching real time again, right there. On the second rep, it doesn't happen as much. It still happens, but I guess, a lot of people are maybe more aggressive with their first rep and they're a little bit looser. They don't have any tension in the muscles because it's the first rep. You're starting from a dead stop. And the second rep, you're storing some energy in those muscles. You're a little bit tighter, a little bit more rigid. You figured out your starting position a little bit better. And so it's not as hard of a hit. It's not as much of a bounce. Then the other potential, very minor potential thing to maybe see as the things get heavier is this first rep, the lockout is very clean. So here, as he passes his knees, you can see now he's locked out this leg. This leg's pretty much locked out as well. And then he brings the hips back, or the hips through and the shoulders back. On the second rep here, where it's obviously more difficult, he comes past the knees. The legs stay a little bit straighter here, so he's not locking out as fast. Here he locks out, and then you can see how it like unlocks and locks out again and locks out right there. So a couple times there where that leg come back again, where this leg here is locking out, unlocking. So if we watch it in real time now and just focus on this leg right here, you can see that little bit of a shake. So I'm not sure if that little bit of shake is just because he's trying to figure out exactly the timing of when to lock out the knee. But the thing to be mindful of, or just to make sure it doesn't happen, is that some people, when the weight gets difficult, what they'll do is they'll lock out their knee and get the bar to come onto their thigh, and then unlock the knee again in order to ramp the bar up. So then you might get called for hitching or supporting the bar is the actual rule. It's because here you kind of lock your knee out, the hand and the bar are on the legs, and then you rebend the knee to try and push the bar up. So just something to be careful of. But it seems like on this one, it's a light enough weight where it's not an issue. Like this would pass in the competition. You just want to make sure as weight gets heavier and heavier, RP gets higher and higher, that leg is not continuously unlocking and locking to try and support the bar. We have a guest appearance here by Rory. Shouldn't you be working, Rory? Actually, probably not at work. It's probably like 6:45 a.m. there or something. All right, let's go over. Oh, we got Mikey's videos here. Do we really want to watch Mikey's videos? Mikey has a coach, so really he should be talking to his coach. And as far as changing technique or changing weights or changing programming, he should talk to his coach. But we'll just take a look at these videos real quick here. So this one was actually really solid. You can see much more patient off the ground, better starting hip position, and then boom, easy lockout. The hips came up very minor amount. So here's where he's trying to start from. And then there's driving his knees out a little bit more. So there you can see hips come up a little bit, torso tips over a little bit. And then there, boom, he starts going. Maybe it's because, I don't know if you guys can tell, it looks like he's wearing Crocs. So maybe it's like, he's wearing Crocs. He doesn't have as good of a shoe to apply force into. Or it could just be like, a bad habit. It's going to take time for him. But really good deadlift there. And then he's got this pause deadlift here. So now he's got correct shoes on and he's doing a better pause here. And then the starting position here. But you can see also this is more of like a controlled dynamic start versus the last one when Alex was really trying to like slam into the bar. So he pushed the bar a little bit forward there. And so again, there you can see the little bit of hips coming up and torso tipping over, but very minor. So it's just like the difference between there and there, let's say. And you can see there's a couple differences here. One of them being also, if you just look at the bars, people, have a difficulty trying to figure out how to pull the slack out of the bar. And then once you get the slack pulled out of the bar, is learning how to pull as much as you possibly can. Because obviously, as you get stronger and you're having more weight on the bar, and when you're getting closer to your max, you can pull more and more of the slack out of that bar before the bar comes off the ground. So here you can see the little bit of difference here, where that's the amount of slack he needs to pull out. But here he's a little bit more relaxed when he's trying to pull. So he's got a little bit of tension in there, but he could potentially get more tension in there. And that's going to allow him to have these other positions as well, where he has a little bit more of a vertical shin, a little bit more of a higher hip position, and then everything's going to be tight and ready to go. And a much better pause there, as I said. So you can see it clearly stopped right there. The amount of time you stop for depends on the person. So he's got to talk to his coach, however long he wants on the pause. But you can see completely stopped right there and then went. So much better there. He said, here's an awful and not awful 495. But I would say they're both not awful. Just got to continue to work on those little things. All right, let's go into our next video. Let's see how many more we got left. We got that one. And then we got this Google Drive. So we'll see if we can knock out those two since we're getting up on 50 minutes right now. So let's take a look at this one. So she just started out sumo. Obviously, it's very lightweight. You can see how easy it's moving, and I can tell she's not actually like trying to pull as fast and as hard as possible. Overall, looks really solid. Just a couple of things that maybe she can improve, but it really depends at certain points when you go to sumo, the wider and wider you go, the more you're trying to point the toes out and drive the knees out. It depends on, how the person's built, how long their legs are, how long their arms are, to see how much they need to lean over, how mobile they are, how their hip socket is built, if they can really drive those knees out, if they have any past injuries that maybe limit them being able to get in that position. And so if we come back here real quick to the first rep here, but you can see how it looks like the knee is a little bit collapsed inwards. So you can see that the knee's a little bit more here where it should be a little bit out more. So it depends on whether she can actually get into this position with the hips down lower and be able to drive the knees out, or if it's going to feel like it's locked up. Because a lot of times when people sit down more, it's going to feel like it's harder to get this knee out. If she had maybe more of a higher hip position, it may feel easier to get the knee out. But then again, you're going to kind of make it more and more like a conventional deadlift. So that's when you see some people who maybe use more of a moderate stance. They can't drive their knees out as well. They still start with a higher hip position. It's kind of like a higher hip position, like a conventional deadlift, versus if you're someone who can really maximize the max width, toes out, knees out, really sitting down into it more, using more quads, then you can really maximize that sumo stance. So it just depends on whether she can get that position down. Other than that, this looks good as far as a good stance width to start with for now. Arms look straight. So good grip width, arms are locked out, good torso angle. As she passes the knees here, doing a good job to just slowly bring the hips through and the shoulders back. At the top, locked out with shoulders back. So really solid technique. Lighter weight, it's just trying to see if it can be improved as far as the starting position to get the knees out more. Getting the knees out more to the sides will allow the hips to be a little bit closer to the bar. So if we go to, so let's see if we can just draw in this position real quick. So if we say like the hips are here and then the bar is here, okay, kind of like we had talked about before, is like this distance right here. Let me switch to this distance right here is how difficult it's going to be on the hip joint. Okay. And the reason why the hip has to be that far away is because obviously you have a femur and your femur has to go that far back. But what you can do is you can artificially shorten your femur by going out wider and wider. So now you're not as tall of a human being, you're shorter of a human being because you went out wider. And then you can also push your knees out to the side. So now you can push your knees out this way and push that knee out that way. A very weird arrow that I drew there. Push your knee out that way. And then this will give you more space in order to bring the hips closer towards the bar, so that hopefully then you can get to a position where maybe your hips are this far away from the bar. Okay, and then this distance right here is shorter. It's going to be less stressful on the hip joint. Okay, it's less demands getting the hip closer. And then potentially you're going to have a little bit more flexion in the knees. So you're going to use a little bit more of the knee joint as well. So that's what you're trying to do if we try and look at it from like a, give me 1 second. If we try to look at more as like a side view, okay, so you would have the bar here. So then we draw our line through the bar, which I didn't draw exactly through the bar. And then if your hips are here, so if you're looking like down the barrel of the bar, that's the distance that we're looking at. Okay, and so this side profile would be like, the person's torso would be here, and then their femur would be here, and then down to the legs like that. So what we're trying to do is go out wider with the feet and push the knees out to the side to reduce this distance here from the side view. So getting the hips closer and closer, like I said, maybe getting it to, you're improving 5%, 10%, depending on how wide you can go with your sumo compared to your conventional, how much you can drive your knees out. And then you'll be able to potentially also get in a lower hip position and a little bit more of an upright torso. So just have to keep trying, working on it, see if we can drive the legs out, and then seeing if you like it. If you don't like it, if it doesn't feel strong, it's me. If you don't like it, if it doesn't feel strong, if you feel like you can't get the knees out and everything like that, then you have to just go back to conventional. In general, too, it's going to vary depending on person, because obviously it depends on how much experience they have, where their muscular strengths are, where their injuries are, everything like that. But in general, if we look at like men and women, oftentimes women have more women are doing a higher percentage are doing sumo. On the men's side, a higher percentage are doing conventional. Some of that is related to body weight. If you look at the lower weight classes, they tend to do more sumo. The higher weight classes tend to do more conventional. Part of it could just be like getting down to position. So if you're like a Ray Williams, or in other sports, if you're looking at like World's Strongest Man, stuff like that, they're just so huge, they're so tall, they're so big that they have to get more of a conventional stance, or like a wide stance conventional. So you'll tend to see more conventional out of them. And also for people who do raw and equipped, on the raw side, you may see a slightly higher percentage of conventional. On the equipped side, you might see slightly more higher percentage of sumo, because the sumo lets you kind of like stretch out the suit a little bit more, as far as going into a wider stance and driving the knees out, and get like, a little bit deeper into a squat to get a little bit more rebound out of the suit. So for people who pull conventional, they may get little to nothing out of a suit. People who pull sumo might get 5%, 10%, 15%, depending on where their weakness is and how they're built and everything like that. So depends on whether for you that would be a long-term solution going to sumo, or whether just not a good fit and it would just be hammering the conventional. And then Critical J here saying, I DM'd you on Instagram for critique. I mean, either one's fine. People are throwing their videos here in different methods. So it depends on whether the video fits for Discord, or if you have to link out to like Google or Imager. So there's different ways that you can do it. I can always look at the Instagram DM and pull it up on here and look at that in the next live stream. But if you want to join our Discord, go in the channel and throw it in here. It'll be easier. It'll be easier to for me to like go through, and easier for me to pull up here rather than going into my Instagram and logging in, going to DMs and finding the video. But if it's easiest for you, if you send it on Instagram, you don't want to throw it in here, then that's fine. I can always just like remember to go to the Instagram DM, or maybe I'll just download the video if it's possible and look at it on there. But obviously it's easiest on here because we can keep track of everything, and we give, as you can see here, we give feedback as well earlier in text format, and you can communicate with us more, asking more questions. You can talk to other people on here and have them give feedback too, versus here in the live stream, it's a little bit more one way. So like I'm just going through and showing what I'm seeing, but I'm not getting as much information from the lifter as far as a conversation. So I think we have one left. And we're at the 1 hour mark. So let's do squat first. It looks like this one is. And just in general, if you guys have higher quality videos, obviously we'll be able to see more stuff. And if you have someone who's not moving during the video, or if you have a tripod, obviously then we can see things as far as bar path and everything like that without movement from the cameraman or camera woman. Again, so far this one looks really solid. So as far as he put at a RP 8, let's take a look at the RP real quick. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the person. For me, oftentimes I'm a little bit more conservative, so I put that more at RP 8.5. 8, I try to see more of a smooth range of motion, where here you can see he's a little bit slower out of the hole. So he's slow right here and then speeds up there. So a lot of times people will then take the, oh, I locked out really fast, it's an RP 8. And I take the, oh, it was a little bit slow coming out of the hole, it's an RP 8.5. And then from there, it just depends on the person. I don't know how well this lifter can grind. This is the first time watching them. So just 8.5. So let's go back and check out the setup. So you can see really solid there as far as the unrack, standing pretty straight up. And then 1, 2, low adjustment there. And then he's ready to go. So really good walkout right there. And then we go into the descent right here, and he takes more of a slow, controlled descent. So that's fine. Depending on the person, you want to go as fast as you can go under control. So for some people, that can be very fast. For some people, that's going to be very slow. So he does more of a slow movement here, speeds up a little bit into bottom position. A little bit hard to see here as far as depth because of the quality of video and the safety in the way, but it looks like either it's parallel or just below. And then there you can see how, again, another issue as far as the knees shooting back a little bit right there, and the knees coming in a little bit. So then you can see how the right here, the hips shoot up. Part of that seems to be, it's again hard to see here, but he has full contact of the shoe here in the ground. And then you can see how the heels are kind of coming in a little bit. So potentially from a lack of ankle mobility, he has his feet like this, and as he's going down, they're actually like coming in a little bit more. Right there, he's having the ankles collapse and the heels actually come in a little bit more. And then this last bit too, in order to hit his depth, he's pushing his knees so far forward. That last bit's pushing a little forward. It looks like the heel comes up a little bit. So it looks like there, it comes up a little bit more. Let me see if I can actually see it better if we go slow mo. So you can hopefully see it there. Right there, it comes in some more. So not only is starting right there, the heel's coming in, but then there it pops in a little bit more because he's trying to like do a little bit of a dip that last bit to get down to depth. And you can see how the knees go forward a little bit down depth. Potentially he's losing a little bit tightness there by really trying to jam the knees forward and have the heels pop up to get that last bit of depth. And then that's causing the knees to come in since the ankle is already collapsed. And that's also causing the hips to shoot up a little bit right there. And then his torso angle changes from here to there, where you can see he's a little bit tipped over more. So let's go back to regular speed here. So that could potentially be making it more difficult too, and slower out of that bottom position. It's just that little shift of the hips shifting back, torso tipping over. Now the hips are further away, and he's losing some positional change as far as horizontal position, not vertical position. So it takes a little bit longer to come up. Then when we go into, I hit the wrong button. Let's go into bench press. It calls this one also RP8. Come on. All right, let's check this one out. We got better quality now. Taking his time to really set up. So in this case, he did 2 reps. I'm not sure if he meant the first rep was an 8, because the first rep did look kind of like an 8. So, pretty smooth motion there. But the second rep obviously looked more difficult here and lagging on one side. So that you would call, at that point, call it a 9.5. And you have to see whether he could actually have done more weight to call it, it could potentially be a 10, because it depends on whether he could have done more weight with the side that's lagging. So let's back it up a little bit. Let's go through the setup first. It takes time right here to really get the weight here up onto the traps. Okay, get the feet where he wants it. Then he gets his lift off here, okay, to get the bar into the position he wants, and then drops the hips down in order to set the arch. Okay, it tends to do a little bit more of like a, feet right underneath you or a little bit forward rather than pulling it really far back. Part of that could just be like, he likes that way as far as having the hips up to unrack and then keeping that horizontal force. Also, these benches suck. So these benches are slippery. The benches are low. It's hard to get the feet back exactly where you want. So sometimes you got to work with what you got. Here, the descent really good as far as tucking the elbows in. So here in the bottom position, you can see elbows are tucked in, touching lower on the chest. The pause looked a little bit quick. So it's a good pause for just doing it by yourself and saying, okay, I paused. But in a competition, the reaction time to hearing someone say press will probably end up being a little bit longer than this. The other thing to be mindful of is here, you can see how the wrists are bent back a little bit more. All right. And then just watch the wrist as he goes up. He starts straightening them out, and at the top straightens them out completely. So we're having a change in position of the wrist and a change in position of the bar as we're pressing up. So if you just watch here, the wrists are bent back, and then he straightens them out there and then straightens them out completely here. So this looks different than down here. Trying to find the bottom position here. So again, there to more like there. So personally, I'm not a fan of trying to, as you're coming down, bend the wrist back, and as you're going up, straighten out the wrist. I'd rather, if they want to keep a bent wrist position and have the bar low, just keep that the entire time. Or if you want to have more of a neutral with the bar again low, is keep that the entire time. So that's one thing to focus on. The other thing to focus on, which could potentially be leading to the weakness on one side, or maybe it's the weakness on one side and maybe some tightness, some other issues that are causing this, is it looks like the wrist position is different. So it looks like this wrist is bent back and this wrist is straight. So you see this sometimes in people too, where they have one wrist that's bent back more and one that's straight more, and they're kind of like benching like that. And if you actually filmed from the top down, you can sometimes see that because they also have, one wrist bent back and one straight, is that their elbow tuck is different as well. So they might have one that's flared out more, and then they might have one that's tucked in more. And so it's a asymmetrical elbow tuck and then an asymmetrical wrist position. So something there to look into, is it a past injury? Is there some kind of tightness? Is there maybe one muscle that's stronger? on a dominant side, and he's trying to use that more. And then he's trying to, compensate for that, whether it's a weakness, tightness, whatever, by having the wrist position different and having the elbow position different. So potentially, if he had his spotter then film from the top down to be able to see that, you could potentially see it too if you don't have a spotter or anything like that. Is if you can set up a box or a tripod or something like this on the side of his head, is filming, front view down towards the top of his head. And so then he can potentially see the elbows from that position. But oftentimes from the top down, you can see the elbow position, and also you can see if the bar is touching evenly on the chest or if it's slanted as well from the different tuck position. So again, there he starts bending the wrist back. That one, he maintains his wrist in a better position, like more of a consistent position until the very end. And then it's just that one side that's lagging. And the one side could even be lagging, again, could be for a number of things, but one could be that if he has it too far in the fingers, it's not as efficient of a press because you're not staying over the wrist joint. And so he's actually like losing force and the weight trying to bend his wrist down further. So he's losing some force in that. Where if it was more of the wrist joint, he wouldn't be necessarily losing any force because it's stacked over the joint. The bones are, very good in compression, and you'd be able to apply maximum force rather than having the bar here. And as he's trying to press, he's actually losing some force there. So he's not as efficient. So that's what I see for the bench press. And let's take a look at the deadlift, and that should be it. For all three lifts, looks like at least he takes his time to really set up in the position that he wants to set up in and really get tight and then get everything right before he initiates the pull. So it's good that he's taking his time, being meticulous. And that looked really solid. Deadlift may be the best one of the three. As usual, like one of the main things here is always just focusing on trying to get the knees out more if you can. If it's the maximum that you can do and that's the best position you can be in, then that's all you can do. But again, if something just to be conscious of and try and work on is trying to get this knee out a little bit more and get a little bit more in line with the toes to really try and engage the hips and be able to get the hips a little bit closer. So not a huge difference here, but potentially could make things a little bit more efficient. Other than that, here he's going to initiate the pull, a little bit tipping forward, very, very, very minor. And then stays in position well as we go past the hips, locks out the knees, brings the shoulders back. Good. And as far as the RPE, I would put that more at an 8. It wasn't like too snappy. So again, just depends on the lifter. But it was one consistent motion, a little bit faster going into lockout, which is what you want for sumo. Didn't take that long to break the ground. So again, I'm conservative, play it safe. I would say that 8, 7.5 is fine as well. So that should catch us up as far as we made it to this one right here. That was from today. And then I don't think we have anything else in here other than Critical J just DM me and then post it here. So we'll save that for next time. And then let's see if we got some new people in the chat. So welcome to all our new people. Again, I threw the link here in this chat. So you can always scroll up in the chat and let me see if I can actually copy it, but it's also in the description. It won't let me copy it. So you can also go down to the link down in the description to get to our Discord, or if you're on Instagram, you can look at the link in my bio or the link in the Can List bio to get to our Discord, and you can come hang out with us and chat with us, and you know, do form checks, do RP checks, help other people out if you want, or if you need help, you can get help from other people. And then as we're doing these live streams, I can help you out as well with what I'm seeing. As far as the timeline coming up, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because we got some meets coming up. I was trying to pull up a calendar. Or I might have to just pull up my taskbar. But the weekend coming up, this coming weekend, I'm good. But the following weekend, the 13th, I will be out of town. I'll be in Orlando for a Special Olympics meet. So it may be more difficult. I was like, why is it so difficult to find a picture of a calendar? Got you guys a festive calendar over here. So we have this weekend coming up where I'm free, which is why we're doing the live stream right now. But we have a Special Olympics meet in Orlando on the 13th. So I'll be driving up on the 12th. So probably won't have time. We'll see, but probably won't have time on the 11th because I'll have to be getting all my coaching work and everything done and get everything set in order to drive up on Friday and set up that event. And then the following week, we'll see. Maybe it'll be a little bit better because the following weekend is actually on Sunday the 21st, again in Orlando, our collegiate state championship. So in that case, I'll probably be driving up on Saturday, which gives me a little bit extra time. So maybe we can do the 18th. So we'll see if we can, best case scenario, we do 11th, 18th, and 25th. Middle scenario or more likely scenario, we do 18th because then we have Thanksgiving. And then worst case scenario is we miss out on 11th because of a meet, 18th because of a meet, and the 25th, and we'll have to come back in December. Also coming up, big Bill McCarthy has posted in there. Tomorrow we're gonna just do a draft of me and him for our for the open world. So we're just gonna do like a regular fantasy league draft. We're gonna do a confidence points like we did with King of Lifts, and then we're gonna do like maybe some one-off prop bets, just like screwing around me and him on a Friday night and see who can score for each game, score the most points. And I mean, for anyone who's interested on the equip side, you get a little bit of preview of like what the battle is going to be like, which weight classes to watch, and that kind of stuff. Especially because there's a World Games qualifier this year. And then the last thing I guess I want to post in there is if you look in the description for the YouTube, you should be able to see it. I'm new to Twitch, so I don't know how the Twitch descriptions work, if it's in there or not. But if you're on YouTube or you're following things going on, there is a little YouTube event going on with all these stars and stuff like that. And so they're doing this little fundraiser for saving our oceans, obviously saving the entire earth, but saving our oceans. Team Seas, you can help remove 30 million pounds of trash. So they're trying to collect $30 million in order to get 30 million pounds of trash out of there. So you can donate however much you want. They're already up to 12 and a half, and they started this a week or two ago. So you can pick a weight if you want, or you can choose your other amount. So since you all came on here, I don't even know how many people were on here during the whole time. I was thinking about trying to do a dollar donation per person, but since I don't know how many people were in total, we'll just do 20 pounds, and we'll put in here Arian. We'll put in positions of power. We'll throw in email. I don't have a good message. I'll just put Powerlifters Unite. For the next, Oh, I gotta put my credit card information. You guys gonna have to make this private real quick. I don't want Bill stealing my credit card information and buying himself SBD socks and stuff like that. So let me do this real quick, and then what we can do, because they're doing it for a little while, is that each live stream you guys come on, tell your friends to come join. Maybe if we get more and more people, I'll donate more and more money, and we'll see if we can make Arian go broke. So you can go tell your friends to join. You can join on your phone and your computer. If you're at a university, you can go to the computer lab and sign in on all of them and put YouTube and Twitch Coach Aaron K on all of them and just have my face in the entire lab going. And then we'll see if we can make Aaron go broke. So there you go. We donated $20 to get to 30 million. Yeah, Bill's trying to steal my money. He can't get my credit card information. So we officially removed 20 pounds. I think you all know I don't lift weights. So I don't lift pounds, but I can remove pounds. So I think we'll cut it there. We're getting on to 1.5 hours. Tell everyone to join the Discord. Have fun with this. There you go. Join the Discord. They can subscribe. They can join our live stream and get their form checked. But we'll shut it down there. So hopefully you all have a good day. I'm going to eat some food and get ready to go watch Eternals. Hopefully it'll turn out to be a good movie. I'll catch you guys in the next stream.